Okay, I'm going to call our Plant Commission meeting for October 11, 2021 to order, please. Roll call.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Phil Willems.
Here.
Chris Thomas.
Here.
Brian Malish.
Here.
Brian Wallace.
Here.
Gary Hersberg.
Here.
Kevin Phelps.
Here.
Okay, first item we have is minutes. Anybody have any changes or look for a motion?
Have a change? I was here.
Have you not?
Good catch.
Were you supposed to be?
I was supposed to be, yes.
Okay. With that change in mind, okay.
I move for approval.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg,
Second.
second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Public comments. If you'd like to make a public comment, there's sheets that Tracy has over there to make comments.
Podium?
What's that?
They're on the podium,
Okay,
if
on the
anybody
podium.
needs one.
Okay. So, the one we had, am I this one to read? You just
For
handed it to me.
the Kramer public hearing, that was submitted prior to the meeting, so you can read that into the record when we get there.
Okay? Any other public comments at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. First item we have is a public hearing. Public hearing and discussion action, a request for conditional use permit by Kathleen Frederick to operate a home-based matting and framing business at 304 West Verleen Avenue. Tim?
Thank you, Chair Zollner. Very briefly, yes, the applicant wishes to operate an in-home matting and framing business at 304 West Verleen Avenue. This request requires a conditional use permit due to the fact that customers will be coming to the house. Applicant has indicated that on-site customer contact will be by appointment only. There's just one thing staff would like to call out your attention to. We are recommending approval, but there's one item, 2G, in the CUP that may need addressing, and that has to do with the hours of operation. You'll see that's left blank, and so that is an item that will need to be discussed this evening. So staff is recommending conditional approval.
Okay, then I am going to open up our public hearing at this time. Anybody who'd like to address the commission? Is there anyone who would like to address the public? All right, everybody's looking away from me for the most part, so that means no. All right, so then I will close our public hearing. Comments from commission members?
Assuming neighbors have been contacted?
I'm sorry?
Have neighbors been contacted?
Yep.
And we didn't hurt anybody. And is there any signage involved? I didn't see that.
Ryan, is there any difference between this and anything that's operating on Main Street? Because we did have an applicant not too long ago.
Well, but that, if I remember correctly, that was going to be more of that was not going to be a home occupation, that was going to be an actual commercial business. Whereas looking at the CUP that you have in front of you today, that it looks to me like the same conditions that we've been putting in for the different conditional uses that we've had for home occupations more recently.
Okay.
I've got the sign right here.
Yep, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that since that was recent. Okay, any others? Brian?
No,
The other Brian? The other Chris?
Do they know when they might want hours of operation?
Not necessarily. I think that's why it's left open right now, so I think they, general daytime operating hours, but I think since that's not specified, the commission may wish to put some parameters on there.
And by appointment only, does that mean we're not expecting traffic or anything due to this? Cars parked outside all the time or anything like that?
Well, so let's say one or two customers in there by appointment only, that would be the extent of any traffic associated with that.
Gary?
No, I'm good.
Phil?
as a former owner of a custom framing and matting business, I would say this is very light traffic, and as far as signage, I think there's a daycare or two in that area that has some temporary signage. It's just a stick in the ground signage. I think that's probably all they're gonna do. I think it's a good addition.
Okay, then we'd look for Kevin?
I was just gonna say, as a current owner of a custom framing shop, I can tell you it's one-on-one, that's all you can handle, right? So it'll be very light traffic.
Okay. Tim?
Perhaps a suggestion under item 2G then would be like 8 AM to 8 PM, just as a point of, to start discussion on hours.
Is the applicant here or ever made any mention of what hours they want?
I don't,
That would be fine,
8 to 8?
yes.
I'm good with that, because I'm
I-
sure there's gonna be early evening hours needed anyways.
Okay.
I would agree that I think they should be allowed some early evening hours, maybe to 7 or so, or 8.
Agreed.
All right, so then, do we have a motion on that front then?
I'll make a motion to approve with the proposed hours of 8 AM to 8 PM, Monday through Friday, and, what, you gonna address hours on Saturday, or?
I would entertain hours on the weekend if a person requires them due to the work schedules.
Okay, so he wants to wait for more of a clear answer on the weekend. I don't see any real difference between the weekend and weekday since it's one at a time. So to me, it doesn't really make any difference, but
For 7 days a week then?
yeah, if that's what they want to do, it doesn't really make any difference.
With the traffic's probably not gonna be an issue, so I'll make a motion to accept the recommended motion here, which I gotta find and read,
Second.
with the hours of 8 to 8, with the hours of 8 to 8, 8 AM to 8 PM.
All right, so motion by Brian Wallace, second by Phil Willems. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you and good luck. All right, next public hearing we have is public hearing and discussion action on a request for conditional use permit by Central States Tower 4 LLC doing business as Verizon Wireless Dish Wireless LLC to construct a new mobile structure, cell tower, and facilities at 805 South Division Street.
Just I'll give the very brief overview of information's in your packet, but the applicant is requesting a CUP for a monopole cell tower at 805 South Division Street. The height is approximately 145 feet with a 5-foot lightning right on top, which would make it about 150 feet in total. The tower is being constructed to house facilities and equipment for Verizon Wireless and Dish Wireless. However, the structure is designed to accommodate 2 additional wireless carriers. The facilities would be accessed along the northerly portion of the site via a 20-foot wide utility and access easement. Representatives on behalf of the applicant are here this evening available for questions. Staff is recommending approval for the CUP document as reviewed by village attorney.
Okay, do you guys want to make some comments before we open public comment?
Certainly.
For a public hearing, thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Mike Long. I'm the attorney for the applicant Central State Tower and Dish and Verizon. With me is Dan Fander, who's on behalf of the applicants, as well as Mr. Kipley, the property owner. This is a rather unique opportunity for providing coverage to 2 wireless carriers. Verizon Wireless, who's looking to, that already has some coverage in the village, but is looking to improve their coverage within the village based on the great demand for their service. And in addition to that, Dish Network, which is in the process of constructing a nationwide communications network as well. Both of these carriers are interested in this tower site, which is basically located right here. It's our understanding that Dish Network would be interested in going on this thing probably during the first quarter or early second quarter of next year, and then we anticipate that Verizon would be coming on it shortly afterwards. The property is, it's zoned I-2. It's, under the village code, towers are allowed as a conditional use permit, and that's why we're here. I can answer any questions from the public or from the commission, but if anybody has any questions for me now before the hearing, I'd be glad to answer them.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll do the public hearing
Okay.
first, and then we'll
Sure.
answer any questions at that. So I'll open up their public hearing for anyone who would like to speak on this topic. Tracy, any notes?
No one's turned in any forms.
Okay, anyone would like to speak? I got one.
If I may say, we've also seen the draft conditional use permit that's been prepared, and we're in agreement with all its terms. My understanding is we have one term to work out relative to like a removal bond or a surety bond. And I talked with Tim today, and he indicated that we could work that out with the village attorney and himself after the meeting.
Okay.
So, just so you know.
Good, thank you. All right, any others? All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Comments from commission members? Gary?
I wonder in comparison to our water towers, height-wise of this structure versus a water tower, about the same?
Well, I'm not sure about the height, but I do want to, and so this isn't going to answer your question, but I want to make you aware of something. So we have a code provision. The code is referenced in the CUP, section 133-1202. Our code has been adopted pursuant to 66.0404 of the statutes, which, quite frankly, really limits our authority to have an impact on this. One of the terms within the statute is, as long as the monopole or the structure is under 200 feet, there's really nothing we can do about it. So I think it may be, I heard Tim say that it may be a little bit taller than the water towers from top to bottom. It's also my understanding in talking to Tim, and when I say Tim Erlitzka, that, for example, we have certain water towers that are put up high. There's a reason why we do that. So when you actually look at the facilities themselves, where with the monopole and then how high the tower is when you consider the landscape, this may not be higher than a water tower.
And is there an auxiliary building for switches in this?
Sure. So within, the applicants entered into a lease agreement with the property owner where this is an 80 by 45 lease parcel. And within that 80 by 45 area, we've got the pole that's projected to go in the middle, and then there's space at each of, to accommodate the 4 anticipated carriers that we expect. So initially, Dish Network is looking at putting their equipment on a concrete pad, and then when Verizon goes on, they're gonna put a little service building. But it will all fit within this fenced-in area here, that's the 80 by
I
45.
just wanted to make sure we had room for the 2 future carriers.
Yep, and it's anticipated, it's planned out for 2 more.
All right.
Very quickly, in answer to your question, Commissioner Hertzberg, about 153 feet of water towers.
All right.
Phil, any comments? Chris?
Where is Verizon currently located? Are they in some water towers now that are in town?
I don't know the answer to that, perhaps.
You know, I'm not exactly sure if they're located on a water tower. I did propose the water tower that's just down the road here, and that was outside of their search ring. It was too close to an existing site, so I do know they're on a wireless facility, whether it's on another water tower or another like cell phone tower within a mile of this area. So really trying to fill in that area right where we're located.
Ryan, go ahead.
I was just going to say that when we met to discuss the staff level, Tim Erlitzka did mention that there's at least one existing lease with Verizon right now, for a water tower.
Okay. That answers my question. I was gonna wonder why we can't just put in another cell, or another water tower that's already out there, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
We looked at the water towers that were close enough proximity to Verizon search area, and it was just too far away. And that tower, from what I understood anyway, was basically at capacity with 2 other carriers on it.
Brian?
saw a note there, FAA not requiring lights. I think Strand may be recommended. Is the thought that it will be lit or no?
Well, one of the features of a monopole is that they're typically built below they don't exceed the height that requires or triggers this lighting threshold. And it's our preference to not have attention brought to it with the form of lighting, both daytime, like a daytime white strobe and then nighttime red. The FAA is saying we don't need to light it. My understanding is that the airfield nearby has indicated that it won't be an issue. And so our preference would be to let it be and not light it.
I think I'm fine with that. I
Yeah.
just noticed, I think Strand had mentioned, he recommended it.
So we,
And I don't know, I was kind of going both ways. Like, it's low enough, we don't need it, great. I don't necessarily need to look out and see another blinking red light at night, kind of that night pollution idea. So I just was kind of curious to hear a little more, so I think I'm good. I'm good with it not being lit.
we did reach out to the airport operator, and he was, as Mike said, that Jim Meyer said that he was okay without it being lit.
All right, nothing else. Thanks.
Brian?
I'm good with it. I'm good.
Kevin?
I'm good. Do we have any standalone poles in the village now? And so this is a first of its kind. Gotcha.
So the biggest thing is for me, is aesthetics versus usefulness. And obviously with cell phones today and Dish Network and things, people use those very heavily, and the better the service, the better people would be happier. I look in, the only issue I have with Tower is that it becomes more city-ish, like a Madison type setting to me, especially with one sitting by itself. But so I'm a little conflicted by that, and I know that we're fairly limited from hearing at utilities of what we can and can't do with this.
And
So
aesthetics is specifically identified as something that we cannot base our decision on, by statute.
and that's why I'm saying it,
Yep.
to make sure people know that. But from the usefulness standpoint, I understand why it's happening and where it's going. So with that said,
We talked about the setback on the pole itself, but like the pads that he talked about, is there any setback requirements on those?
I'm sorry, on which
On the
part?
pad he talked about, it's shown on whatever page this is. C3, yeah, I'm just curious if there's a setback from the property line requirement.
So for the accessory structures, or it's 5 feet?
Yes, for the accessory structures.
Five. Okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, so, okay, all right.
okay?
Yeah.
All right, so, any other questions, or I'd look for a motion?
I would make a motion to approve the site plan and conditional use permit for at 805 South Division Street as recommended by staff.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg,
I'll second.
second by, is it Kevin? Kevin Phelps? Any other comments? Call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Does this go before the village board as well, or do we?
No, no.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next public hearing we have is public hearing and discussion action on request by Forward Development Group on behalf of Kramer Development for amendment to the general development plan of Woodland Crest to include lots 1 and 2 of CSM 4619, corner of Century Avenue and Peaceful Valley Parkway. Tim?
Thank you, Chair Zellner. Yes, Kramer Development is requesting approval of an amendment to the Woodland Crest General Development Plan that would add the 2 existing parcels, as shown on the screen with the number 3, at the intersection of County Highway Q and Peaceful Valley Parkway. The request to include these lots as part of the Woodland Crest GDP would create a sense of continuity along this block of County Highway Q and be consistent with the development already in progress, also by Kramer Development immediately north of this site. Allowance of commercial uses on this site, as are allowed through the Woodland Crest GDP, is consistent with the comprehensive plan which calls for commercial land use at this location. The preliminary plan submitted with the materials show 3 access points to the site. with one being a right-in, right-out at the far northwest corner of the site along Century Avenue or County Highway Q, and then 2 others interior to the site with the adjacent property. The TIA provided for the site indicates that the driveway location, as shown, will not adversely affect the signal operation at Century Avenue and Peaceful Valley Parkway. The applicant's preliminary plans for the site do show building placed behind a parking field along Century Avenue. The Plan Commission should discuss the degree to which specific parameters for building placement on this site should be included as part of this GDP or addressed at the time of SIP. Prior to the development of this site, approval of an SIP will be needed along with a certified survey map to combine these lots and dedicate right-of-way. The CSM would also establish the necessary utility easements needed to accommodate commercial development on the site. Staff is recommending approval of the GDP, however, encourages the Plan Commission to address the siting of the building, whether it's appropriate here at GDP time or time of SIP. Jeff Kramer with Kramer Development is here, available for questions, and that everything else should be in the packet.
Jeff, would you like to speak before we go to public hearing?
I can make a presentation if needed or wanted, or?
Go ahead.
Thanks, everyone. So, I'll just take you back a couple months ago. We came in, talked about this site. At that time, we had 2 smaller buildings laid out on the site. We had a couple drive-through options. As we got into it a little bit further, we just kind of ran out of parking, to be honest, and it didn't work at the 2 buildings. And then some of the comments we heard too at the time were, having a little bit more mass or a little bit more interesting architecture on this site at the corner was desired. So I think the larger building probably plays better from an architectural standpoint. It's just under 9,000 square feet. So kind of similar to the leg on 2A above that faces the street, kind of similar size to that. And Tim and I talked about building placement. It's typically not a thing that goes in the GDP, but from my timing perspective, so I'm working on trying to close on the property in December, and then we would follow up with the SIP probably in January. And the 2 big things I'm trying to make sure that we have accomplished, one was the right-in, right-out on Q. So I went ahead and had the traffic study completed for this meeting to make sure that that's understood and looked at. And the second was the drive-through. So the drive-through is critical to this site because of the tenants we're talking to and working with. If the drive-through is not a part of it, I can't make this financially work. So I wanted to kind of bring that out in terms of the building placement and how the site flows. So a couple of reasons why we did what we did with respect to setting the building back a little bit. I don't know, 15 years ago or something when new urbanism was talked about and everyone stressed the pedestrian connections and buildings up against the street. That changed how a lot of development happens. And I think one of the unintended consequences with a building like this is if you push it up against the street like we did with the building to the north, that backside ends up being pretty blank, pretty boring. And so I'll give you an example. So like Noodles and Company has that drive-through there. Their space is like 2,300 square feet. They're using less than 30% of it for actual seating. The rest is all kitchen space, back of house, bathrooms, that kind of thing. So we have a patio on the backside of that building for them, but they'll probably propose those windows being completely blank, you can't see in them, and it ends up being a pretty boring, non-interactive space. And then, next to them we have an optical group that's going in. The back of their space is a couple offices, 2 restrooms. So the intention of trying to pull the buildings forward is to create more interaction and more activity and highlight that streetscape. But in reality, because of the types of tenants that go into these buildings, it becomes the back of their space. And it doesn't work real well. So that's one of the reasons. And then setting the building back a little bit gives some view corridor through that site as well as the site number 2 that I'm working on. And you'll see activity and things happening. And I think besides the building we're building just to the north, I don't know of another building that's laid perpendicular to Century Avenue, up and down this corridor, from here out to Buck and Honey's, it's either perpendicular or setback off the street. So our building is probably one of the only ones in town in this area that does that, with the existing development. And then lastly, with Hy-Vee's project, they're setback off the street with a huge parking field in front of them. So that was really an opportunity to take that, which is like a 60,000 square foot building, and push it up to the street if that's really the intention, to create that feel. Without that happening, it's really a piecemeal type thing. And Jason had a comment in his staff report about the comprehensive plan. I don't see anything in the comprehensive plan that says buildings should be sited up against the road. I see a discussion about high quality architecture, landscaping, things like that. So our design hides the drive-through. All the cars in that drive-through are hidden behind the building. And we'll do your typical landscape treatments along County Highway Q, as I mentioned in the application. And then on the Peaceful Valley Parkway side, and I mentioned the application this too, we were talking about doing that same kind of idea with the fencing and masonry columns that they have up and down Q right now. So that'll tie things in and hopefully be kind of a focal point for that corner. So that's what I wanted to share with you at this point, and then I can answer questions as they come up.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to talk first or open the public hearing? It's up to you. I asked you. Okay, if you prefer.
I will, if I may, just a couple things in this. So one of the things I'd like to add is in the staff report, but I didn't include in my oral remarks. So included in the application is a request to allow outdoor drinking and dining uses permitted by right, rather than a conditional use permit or a conditional use as there currently are within the GDP. Staff recommends that those uses remain as conditional uses to be consistent with the overall development. So that's one thing. The other thing that wasn't addressed, I think, in our staff memos was the within the TIA, it looked at several access points. And so I think one of the things that's going to be important for this site is that there is access to the east. And so I would suggest that the GDP would need to specify the need for an access easement to the east to allow for integration into that site as well, in addition to that access point at the northwest corner. So those two items.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to open up our public hearing at this time for anybody who'd like to address this issue.
I have no comments other than the one that I already gave you.
So I'll read, this is from Jerry Tierney. I just wanted to let you know that we looked at Jeff Kramer's project just north of Kilkenny Farms, and we think it would be a great asset for the community. Thanks, Jerry Tierney. Any others? Okay, I will close the public hearing. So, comments from commissioners? Now? So I will let everybody know that I will not be voting on this issue because I do have relations with Mr. Kramer through our bank, and so I won't be voting. He knows that as well already, as does our village attorney. So this is going to be your guys' discussion. I'm just sitting.
One comment, and Jeff, I like the buildings you've already put up. I like that, the look, nice job. I sometimes, as we come into the village, and we see a lot of masonry as we come up into the village, and I'm wondering on that Peaceful Valley side, because it's kind of a view corridor when you come up into Waunakee, if we can incorporate a little bit more masonry there to maybe that transition into the next, phase. I don't know if you can, but just my personal opinion.
Sure.
Kevin?
Where's the patio? Is that on the west side, like towards the parking lot?
Yeah, so the intention is, I don't know if it shows any better, but, so the intention is to have patios on each side.
Okay.
And so we're anticipating that there'd be a coffee shop up here and some sort of restaurant down here. And we'd utilize, say it's maybe like a free parking spot with that kind of thing. And we'd utilize those areas with some fencing and outdoor seating in those areas.
And the queuing up for a drive-through just sort of wraps around the building to the south?
Yeah, so it comes in, you queue down here,
Yep.
come around, and then head back out. That's the idea. So you get a nice long stack with that,
Mhm.
and it shouldn't obstructing the movements in the parking field. And then, like I said, conceal some of those cars in the backside there.
I like that. Can you show that again? Where do you enter in from County Q?
Yeah,
Are you-
so
that's your own?
here's the right in, right out. So if you're coming from Q, you come in here and you drive this way to get into the drive-through. If you're coming from Peaceful Valley, you could come in here and come up. And then this is our other access point here that comes in. So, and I agree with Tim, we need to have a easement with the neighboring property for development for those two areas, and that drive-through lane, or that drive lane, I should say, that goes north and south.
Yes, depending on timing of this, before there, you could end up with no access from the east.
So my thought on that is, I would like to enter into that agreement in the next 60 days, that easement. And then we'd have a recapture agreement. So if I start this project before they do, I'll build that road and then recapture that cost from that owner. So I need that to get circulation to work out properly. It just doesn't work well if we don't have that right away.
And you talked about, like a fencing, columns, like they got the columns and
Yeah.
stuff down
That-
like Quick Trip and whatnot, or coming off the corridor, that's what you would probably, would you put that along Q as well, then you think? Or what do you got going, not for, I guess it kind of impacts like by your existing buildings going up?
Yeah, just general landscaping, along front. So there's this multi-use path that's gonna go in there, and I'm envisioning we have a connection to that. At this stage, we're not showing a lot of those details, but I'm envisioning there's a pedestrian connection somewhere off of that path. This path would have a pedestrian connection too, but it wouldn't be accessible for bikers, given the grade change. So there'll be a retaining wall that has to get put in right here in order to put that path in. So right now, there's a pretty big hill that drops off to the curb. So that gets a retaining wall. Above the retaining wall, we could do that fencing and masonry column idea. It doesn't have to be that, it's been used already, and it's nicely done, so that was one of the things we mentioned. And then in this area, there's a bunch of easements already in there. So I've talked to utilities about how do we kind of work together through that side to make sure that, one, we can get our plantings in, the bike path, the turn lane gets, put in, and then the parking field. So we probably have, lower landscaping along the property line by the path, and then utilize some of the islands for shade trees and things like that. That's the idea.
Chris, can I interject here? I just want to make sure that everyone understands. All we're looking at tonight is the proposed amendment to the general development plan. Now, I think it's appropriate that you guys are having the conversation that you're having, as long as it relates to, because I think what the applicant would like to get some feedback on tonight as he looks forward to the SIP/site plan is the location of that building going to be satisfactory to you? And to the extent that your thought process at a plan commission is, you know what, we can live with the location of the building if we have certain landscaping put in, I think that's relevant to the discussion. But I just want to make sure we don't go too far down the path of the site plan, because that, and the SIP, because the applicant hasn't had the chance to put that together yet, and we also don't have that before you tonight. So I just wanted to flag that.
Yep, so based on, I'm good with the buildings being set back, we're just thinking about some of those things that break up that visual a little bit, so.
Thanks.
Brian?
And keeping it to the building location, to be quite honest, I sort of maybe like the differing distances off the road. I'm not one to be particularly in love with having the building right up close to the road itself. It has a more urban feel, and I feel like a little bit of parking lot between the street kind of softens that feel a little bit. So certainly as we travel up this corridor, a little differentiation there, I've got no problem with. So yeah, I'm good with 3 being to the backside here.
We looked at flipping that, so the parking field's in the back and the drive-through is along the front. It just doesn't really work well. Then you have all your service doors in the back. If you make those all storefront doors, people think you can get in there, but all the tenants lock those doors, so it ends up being confusing.
I didn't like the idea of the queue lane being along the road side anyway. So, no, I'm good. Thanks.
Phil?
I'm good with it. I think it's right. Customers don't like to park behind buildings, so if they're out in front, they're happier.
I'm good. Chris? Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question? You may have said something about the access through the parking for the residential building being important to circulation. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that, so that's consistent with what we've been talking about. One of the things that we've been talking about at staff level is strategies to mitigate the risk of the commercial traffic kind of zooming through there. And so while I think it's appropriate that your customers have access such that they wouldn't be able to say, no trespassing or anything like that, that we might also be recommending for the residential property that there be speed bumps or speed tables or something that kind of discourages that cut-through traffic.
Sure.
Do you see that as problematic?
I don't. I mean, as long as we can route people north or south and go east, I think that's helpful. And then bringing people down from my existing site is nice to be able to bring them down and come in. Because you're coming from downtown here, you're probably going to turn left and go into Sarah Lane, the new road, turn right into my existing site and come straight down in. That's a pretty easy way to navigate this. So I'm not opposed to that as long as people have the ability to transfer through those areas freely.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd make a motion to recommend that the Joint Plan Commission recommend approval of the amendment to the Woodland Crest General Development Plan for lots 1 and 2 of CSM 4619 Dane County to the Village Board per staff recommendations.
A motion by Gary Hertzberg,
Second.
second by Mike Malich. Any other comments? Call the question, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And I recuse. Thank you. Thank you.
everyone.
Yep,
Appreciate your
thanks, thank you.
All right, under new business, our first is initial consultation, Millhouse Inn, 100 Baker Street. Tim?
All right. This next one is, just a consultation. The applicant is here with us this evening, Brett Bauer. Sorry?
No, I was just saying I'm here,
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
He would like your feedback on a proposal to convert the upper floor of the Millhouse Quilt Building into a boutique hotel, 6 rooms. The proposed uses would be in general conformance with the comprehensive plan. The applicants have indicated they plan to keep the character of the building exterior intact. However, they're encouraged to review the guidelines for site design for historic downtown as found in the land use chapter of the plan if they do choose to pursue the CUP. Staff encourages the applicant to engage early with an architect or engineer to determine the extent of modifications needed to bring the building into compliance with relevant building codes based on the new uses. And I would add that our emergency responders did express some concern about the age of the building and whether they, again, working with that architect or engineer would need to determine if a sprinkler system would be needed, because this is a relatively old building. There's a lot of wood structure in there that's flammable, as well as the need by our EMS department to access the upper floors with stretchers. So those things should be taken into consideration if the applicant wishes to pursue a CUP. But again, if you'd like to make some comments, Brett, or commissioners, if you have questions of the applicant, he's here. But again, this is just an initial consult, and if he does decide to move forward looking for feedback, is this generally a good idea for this site in this location? I think that's the kind of feedback he's looking for.
Okay. Would you like to make any comments?
Sure, yeah, I'll just kind of briefly introduce myself. I'm Brett Bauer. My business partner David's not here tonight, but so David and I have been looking at the building for about 6 months with the intention of hopefully doing a small boutique hotel upstairs. Speaking to friends and family that are in Waunakee, they just have kind of said when a family comes to town, there's not really an ideal spot for them to stay and explore the downtown area. So I know it's not expansive, it's not a ton of rooms, but it kind of fits the aesthetic of the building to have it be small and to continue on with the 150-year-old aesthetic of the building. So we currently have an accepted offer on the building and negotiating with the current tenants
about the first floor and the basement space. And then the upstairs is currently kind of like underutilized. It's just being, there's the floor plan that David and I drew up. So they would continue occupying the entire first floor as well as that 320 square foot space at the top of that front of the landing area. And the second floor was already designed to be occupied by the current owner. He's the previous owner of the mill house, and they were going to live in the upstairs, and then they just decided to not do that. So it's all plumbed for 3 bathrooms. It's got 4 bedrooms currently, so we'd only need 2 additional walls in that common space on the far right of the second floor, and then we'd be able to fit in the 6 room requirement. There's already a separate commercial entry door. If you can scroll down slightly, Tracy. Or sorry, it's actually the top one. Scroll up just a little more. Yep. So that white space is already it's an ADA ramp that goes to the commercial entry door in purple, and then that stairs goes up to the second floor. So it already has the 2 private entryways. So very minimal, actually there's nothing that we believe we're going to have to do to the outside of the building. And then on the second floor, like you said, I think I would need a push bar exit on where it changes from red to purple there. So we have the 2 exits. But I'm here to get your comments and just see if you think it's a good idea to pursue. So my experience is I have 3 short-term rentals that I've been doing for 5 years. David has a fly fishing business that he wants to occupy some of the space in the basement, so that would be a new business coming to town. He's been in business for 5 years as a well, so we get to go through the SBA for financing on it since we'll be occupying 51% of the building. That's about all I have for initial comments, but if you have anything for me, I'd be happy to answer. This is my first meeting like this, so sorry for my nerves a little bit.
Well, I think you did a great job.
Hey, thanks.
For the first one, you did a great job. So, I didn't get to speak our last topic, so I'm gonna speak first this time, if that's okay with everybody. Usually I let you guys go first. Couple questions. I do like the concept of what you're talking about. Parking, are we good on parking if we break into this?
So as noted, there does appear to be enough space on the site for the necessary parking for the new uses. However, there would likely be some modifications needed, especially to that, I guess it'd be the northwest portion of the building to stripe it and provide adequate circulation through there. So some modifications to the site would be needed, but in terms of space, probably enough.
Okay, then you mentioned in here, it's about $70,000 is what you're thinking for improvements?
Yes.
Is there a requirement that an elevator goes in for handicap accessibility going upstairs?
I don't believe there's a requirement because the current tenants had requested that from the current owner. And they hold classes in that common area upstairs currently, and they're not required to have it. So
I don't know the answer. Do you know the answer?
I don't
to
know
this?
the answer.
I don't know, that's where we're working with that licensed architect or engineer would bring those building code requirements into play, and that would anser that
And
question.
I'm only saying that because we're changing a use
Mhm.
within this in something, so I'm assuming that we're gonna probably have to have something along those, but I don't know that. And I
Okay.
know that elevators are not inexpensive, so. Okay, those are my comments. Otherwise, I think it looks great
Okay.
on that. Brian, any comments?
Yeah, sure, I'm kind of along that same line. One, I'd love the idea of having a little boutique hotel in here. Same problem when we have, a little bit of family come to visit, we've got nowhere for them to stay, so they end up staying not nearby, so that's unfortunate. So I do love that. I'd love to see this, I think, come to fruition. Nice use of an old existing facility. I would echo, I think it's important to get an architect on board pretty quick, because I share the same concerns. Anytime you start touching a building, you get north of some percentage in terms of renovation, that really triggers a lot of stuff from the state, especially with a use such as a hotel and inn. I don't see how you'd get away from an elevator, to be quite honest. So I do think that's gonna that's gonna sting a little bit.
Yeah.
In trying to make that work. And then you've got the sprinklering and the differing uses. There's gonna be fire separation issues, I think, potentially, so. I wanna say yes, go
Yeah,
for it, but
yeah,
I think the sooner you get an architect to kinda go through those, the use separation by floor and even on floor and the access with the elevator, I think are gonna be two big hurdles to get past initially. But I'm rooting for you.
Fingers crossed. All right.
Yeah.
That's good.
All right, I've been kind of doing one and then the other, and then opposite, so I'm gonna go this way this time. Kevin?
I love the concept. I hope it happens. I'm with Brian. It would shock me if you didn't have to sprinkle the space. I just can't even believe that could happen, but, no, I love it.
Chris?
I like the concept too. I guess I echo the same concerns. Fire hazards, elevators, all that kind of stuff. Do you mind walking through the second floor one more time for me? Just
Sure.
which ones are rooms? Where's like the
Yeah,
common
so-
area?
This floor plan, those like interior walls are not exact. That's just the plan that we got from the current owner. So the front two bedrooms are actually just 10 by 10. So there's probably actually a wall here and a wall here. And then this is actually about a 25 by 10 room. And then there's actually a bathroom here. So the two interior walls would just be put up here and here. So then when you come up the common staircase here, this whole, and it's actually a vaulted ceiling area that has the beams or that are all exposed. That would just be a couple of couches for like a self check-in area, which is kind of what that smaller boutique hotel is leaning towards now. People like to be able to self check in and be able to get in on their own terms. So there wouldn't actually be a full-time like hostess or anything, or host or hostess at the, or that would have to be there. It would be self check-in. But that's how we would get to the 6 rooms. There is already 4 and 3 full baths, so we would need actually 1 additional full bath to be put in and connected to one of the bedrooms. And sorry, I don't have the exact blueprints, because even the blueprints that Mike, the current owner, has are from '95, and they've changed since he actually had those done. But that's what we got from him, so that's kind of what we had to go out currently. And the reason why we just want to talk to you first is before we get into spending money on the architect, we just want to see if you think it would be a good idea, or if there would be any pushback at all. And we do understand the concerns. Those are certainly things we have to worry about. I work with the Madison Fire Department, so I totally understand.
What do you, in your business plan, what do you have the room rates at?
So the smaller rooms, we were just trying to be extremely conservative, and we did everything at about a 50% occupancy rate, but we were looking at like $70 a night for the 2 10 by 10 rooms and about $100 a night for the other 4 rooms. And that put us like around $4,500 a month, but that was extremely conservative with only 50% occupancy. And then we still have the tenants in the downstairs as well. So typically, like in my 4 units that I manage, I'm averaging like between 70 and 80% occupancy, and those are in Monona, Madison, and Middleton that I have. So I'm just looking to expand on that business. David's kind of coming on board with me. We're going to be 50% owners of the building, and then he's going to be occupying that space for his fly fishing business as well, which is essentially like it's going to be more storage in the basement, and there is actually access, separate access for him to come through the basement on the back side of the building. And speaking to that space on the northwest side of the lot, we do want to improve, because it's kind of all gravel and it's in disarray right now, but the current owner, he did kind of plan to build a deck off the back here and to make this like a nice, like an outdoor seating area with decorative gravel and landscaping, and possibly gas fireplaces is kind of the vision for the future, if we can get to that point once we get the other 2 businesses started in the building. But that back area is kind of underutilized as well, and that's kind of where we're seeing the opportunity with the building, because it is in a neat spot there. And then I went to Lone Grill a couple times and stared across the street and said it'd be extremely nice to have something close by here.
Okay, Brian, any comments? Wallace?
Me, no, I think I'm hopeful they can find a way to make this work, but I
Yeah.
would echo some of the other comments that have already been made, so.
We understand that we have some work to do, so I appreciate you giving us the comments.
I like the concept. I think it'd be great for small reunions, wedding parties, et cetera. But I'm concerned about the handicapped accessibility. I just don't think the SBA, especially if you're gonna get a loan from them, is gonna let you go without it.
Here?
No, I love the idea, hope we can work it out.
Yeah, I think conceptually, everybody likes it.
Okay.
It's just a matter of if you can work the finances to make all the improvements that are
Yeah.
probably gonna be needed.
I did talk to Mike, the current owner, about, because he was going to put an elevator in when he redid the building in 1995, chose not to for expense reasons, but he does have some ideas on how that could be done, so we'll definitely look into it further.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
I should have asked, do you guys have any comments if you want any? No? Okay. Perfect, thank you. All right, next item for new business, discussion recommendation on proposed Springfield intergovernmental agreement. Tim?
All right, thank you. This next item, I'm probably gonna defer your questions primarily to Jason, since he was the one who's done a lot of the heavy lifting on this one. So this item involves an intergovernmental agreement between the village of Waunakee and the town of Springfield. We've had, the two jurisdictions have had an intergovernmental agreement in place for quite some time. However, the current one has actually expired in 2016. So Jason has been working with representatives from the village. I came in the last few meetings to update the current IGA into the next iteration. And this next iteration touches on a few things, and they're enumerated with the bullet points in the staff memo. These include updated policies carried over from each jurisdiction's updated comprehensive plan, so there were some exhibits that are much newer. Obviously, the village boundaries changed, so that extraterritorial boundary has pushed out slightly with that. And this iteration generally limits the higher density, single-family residential development relative to town standards, that is, residential, or the higher density, to areas identified as the rural neighborhood area on Exhibit B in the staff report. In addition, it also creates a new section, identified as 4J, that seeks to protect the rural and agricultural character of lands within this area, and that's really the view shed or view corridor from Highway 19 as you're leaving on the west of town and looking both on the north and south of that highway. So this section 4J speaks to doing things like building placement, some changes to vegetation, setbacks, planting, new vegetation and/or berming, doing some techniques that would help protect that corridor. So with the changes, staff is recommending approval. Would note that the town plan commission voted in favor of this, or recommended in favor of this at their October 4th meeting. And then lastly, if this body decides to move this forward, the intent would be for, at some time in the relatively near future, for both jurisdictions' board to meet and adopt this jointly as a show of good faith. So with that, staff is recommending approval, but available for questions.
Okay, I guess I'll ask the first question. Jason and Brian, from a legal standpoint, is there anything that we should be not liking about this agreement?
I haven't, not that I'm aware of, I haven't had a chance to really consult with Jason and Tim and Todd on it, but, I mean, as long as it's relatively consistent with what you had before, I don't think there would be legal issues.
Okay. See, I started there. Gary? Comments, questions?
No, I don't think I have any questions at this time.
Bill? Brian Wallace?
No questions.
Chris Thomas?
Well, if it's consistent with what we had back in 2016, I don't have any questions.
Kevin?
I guess the only question I have is the one that expired in 16, how long did we have that one, and what's the expiration on the new one?
Good question. So these go generally for 10 years.
Okay.
So the previous one was adopted about '06. This would be another 10-year.
Sound good.
Was there a reason it expired?
I don't know, maybe Jason can speak to that, I don't know.
The type of agreement it is only allowed to last 10 years. I believe that there was sort of there was an opportunity for renewal, but neither entity took the initiative to make that renewal happen, so it just lapsed.
Brian?
I don't think I've got any questions, sir.
Okay. So I'm comfortable with it. I wish to a certain degree that I would have been a little more in the discussions, but as we were going through this, I'll point that to staff. Since there's an agreement, it's one thing to read it, it's another thing to have discussions about it. So, that said, I'm gonna make the motion that we approve of our proposed Springfield Intergovernmental Agreement.
Second.
Got a second by Phil Williams. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission update?
Quick one, there's a change, so there are 3 items, originally there were 3 items scheduled for tomorrow's meeting. One of them, you heard this evening, is the Kramer request for the GDP amendment to Woodland Crest, so that's one thing. The next one is a holdover from their last meeting, and that is a proposed MG&E easement for a gas line expansion across that portion of property. So representatives from MG&E will be at that meeting tomorrow to address the questions that were raised at the last meeting. And then there was a initial consult for 5995 River Road that we learned today was withdrawn by the applicant. So only 2 items, those 2 items appearing at tomorrow's meeting.
Joint Plan Commissioners, okay? Any comments or questions or concerns?
Do we have a quorum?
Thank you, Chris.
Do have a quorum, okay.
Somebody.
All right.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Gary Hertzberg to adjourn.
Second.
Second by Kevin Phelps. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.